A question that I started thinking about is could Ad Hoc Studios be the new standard for episodic games? When Dispatch released and the first two episodes came out, there was so much conversation, hype around the game. So many people didn't even know that the game was coming out, and then they saw everything and they were like, holy shit, they jumped into it, and it just blew your mind. For me, the game felt like I was watching a TV show, just like regular on TV. The animation, the way it flowed, it was fantastic. And as Dispatch started playing and I was going through episode 1 and you did some of the fight scenes with Robert, I was starting to think, when I play The Wolf Among Us or when I play The Walking Dead or Batman, and obviously all from Telltale, there's usually sections that I can kind of control my character and just walk around and pick things up and explore a little bit. And so I was kind of waiting for that to happen in Dispatch. And mind you guys, I had no idea that Dispatch was coming out. I mean, it hit me like a train. If you guys remember, I was very shocked. It wasn't even on my radar, and it completely threw me by surprise. So I didn't know anything about it. I hadn't seen any trailers. I knew nothing about it. And I quickly realized that there was never going to be an area that I could just stop and start walking and looking around and exploring. I thought that maybe I could do it at our apartment. I thought I could do it maybe at the SDN office. I thought I was going to be able to move around and kind of find and see things. But looking at the way the animation was and looking how the game was flowing, I don't know that it would have necessarily worked. Like when you look at The Wolf Among Us, for example, the way the cutscenes look, they look very similar, almost exactly to when you start playing and moving your character around. So again, that is just one of the gameplay mechanics of Telltale games. And the most recent Telltale game released is The Expanse. I played it here on the channel when it first released, and we did the story explained for each episode. Now, at the time, I was in a bad place, and I felt just really bad. Nothing to get into. And I felt like those videos were really, really bad. So I ended up scrapping them and deleting them. I had first unlisted them, but then I deleted them. And it was this whole ordeal. I was very disappointed with that. But the game itself, I was very happy with. I remember playing The Expanse, and I had never seen the shows before I played the game. And I thought, this is really cool. I love Telltale games. I want to come in here. I want to play these games. I'm glad that they're back. I hope that this is a good introduction to them returning, and I hope this begins their journey towards releasing, season 2 of The Wolf Among Us and then whatever else they have planned. I was just very happy. The new animation, the new style for Telltale games in The Expanse kind of remained very similar to what they had done before. It felt very Telltale-like. It felt familiar. It felt like something that we had played before, but it looked so much better. The animation felt smoother. The gameplay felt smoother. It just felt like modernized Telltale. It felt like a modern Telltale. And everything was much quicker and responsive, and I really liked that. But I don't remember there being so much hype. I don't remember there being so much talk about how fantastic The Expanse was. And again, like I said, I wasn't in the best of places at the time, so maybe that conversation was happening and I wasn't paying attention, but I don't remember that, right? I really don't remember there even being much interest around it. Maybe if it would have been a new season of The Walking Dead, or if it would have been, The Wolf Among Us 2, it would have been real hype because I was dying for The Wolf Among Us 2. But The Expanse was just something that I was happy to see Telltale return. I was happy to see them working. And I thought overall it was a very good game and a good return to form. However, with Ad Hoc, having so many of the people that were involved in making those classic Telltale games that we loved, them coming over, creating their own studio, were, being Ad Hoc and then releasing their game Dispatch, there was a shift, I felt, into what an episodic game can be. Telltale has always been, at least in my opinion, they have always seemed to have been the standard for episodic stories, for episodic games. The way they tell their stories, the way they create their worlds, the gameplay of them. It's really fun to be able to dive into a game like The Wolf Among Us and explore, this very interesting world and make choices, and having your choices affect those around you, and maybe making a choice that allows you to do this or allows you to do that, or how people perceive you, getting the little message, they will remember that, or she won't forget that, or something like that. It allows you to do different things. And you could either have Big B be a very restrained guy who is fighting to do the right thing, or you can have him be very angry and bad like he used to. Everybody's going to experience something different. So there's such uniqueness to being able to make these choices. There's a uniqueness to these episodic type of games. And Telltale has always just really been the standard for that. But Ad Hoc came out the gates with Dispatch, and Dispatch has the people behind them. Dispatch has the public behind them. Dispatch changed it all. You know, the gameplay was focused around dispatching. It seemed like a smaller mini game, kind of in its own little world, in its own little bubble. When you were doing the dispatching, it felt detached from what you were doing story-wise. You were just there kind of messing around and doing something. And then when you finished that, you went into the long cutscene and you got to make your choices. But when the cutscene started, it felt like you just started resuming watching your favorite TV show. It was just like you were maybe taking a break, doing the little game, and then going back to it. That's what it felt like to me. And so if there's other studios out there, or if there's other people that want to try out episodic games, what type of route do you go? You know, what is the standard for you now? Do you try to achieve something like The Wolf Among Us has done throughout the years and keep some of that formula going? Or do you try to do something like Dispatch, where it's more like you're watching a TV show, more like you're watching something, and then there's a mini game there that you kind of do, and then you go back to watching and making your choices? Because to be honest, my favorite parts about Dispatch was when I was seeing the cutscenes and Robert was in conversation with somebody and I was making my choices of say this or say that, say this or say that. The dispatching wasn't necessarily the best part for me. That it wasn't, when I was dispatching, I wasn't like, this is so fucking fun. No, not really. I would have preferred to, like, I prefer like when I'm Bigby wandering a crime scene and investigating. That was something that I would have liked more. But I'm not saying one is better than the other. I mean, I'm just saying that that's my personal opinion, how I was feeling. So when you're doing dispatch, and I was dispatching, it was whatever. But when I was really into the game was when I was in a cutscene and they ask me a question and I have to reply, and then I go down and then I keep the conversation going and we're just having that conversation. It's really cool to be able to make those choices. Another part that I found very interesting when doing dispatch was the fighting, being able to, you know, slide X down and moving the analog and having them move. It felt just different. You could clearly tell. Obviously, Dispatch has some of that Telltale DNA, and you would because of the writers and the people behind it, but not just that. There's a spin to it. They did their own thing. You know that it's not necessarily Telltale because they're doing things differently with the fighting and the gameplay mechanics and the animation. All right, guys, I want to take a quick break from the Dispatch, and I just want to say thank you for watching these videos. Thank you for supporting me, and I want to ask that you please consider hitting the subscribe button. If you really enjoy it and you haven't subscribed yet, please, again, I would ask that you consider to subscribe, because we have a goal to hit 30,000 subscribers before we bring in the new year. And it's going to be very, very difficult, but I know with your help we can get there, and it would mean a lot to me. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you for being here. Let's go ahead and get back to Dispatch. The question I posed today was, is Ad Hoc the new standard for episodic games? And it could be. It could be, because as Dispatch and Ad Hoc are riding the fucking wave and riding it all the way to the moon, and the hype is building up, and the conversation surrounding season 2, and all of these amazing characters that they wrote, like Invisigal, like Blonde Blazer, like Robert, like Malevola. All of these characters are so interesting. Phenomenon, the genre, everything that they did just hit. I don't know. I don't want to say like it's like lightning in a bottle, but it felt that way. It was such an interesting concept. It was such a fantastic debut game for Ad Hoc, and it really had to put some fear into Telltale, because they're competitors at the end of the day. They compete against each other. They want to release episodic games. They want to be the best. They want to make the most money, you know, whatever. They had to have some fear, like, damn, Ad Hoc came with that shit. You know what I mean? They are not playing. They're not messing around. They came here for the throne, boy. They didn't came here to do nothing else. They want that throne. They want to be the king. You feel me? So it gets wild, right? And so I started thinking about it. I was like, yo, maybe I should go back and, you know, play The Expanse again and do maybe a the first mission or something. And how does that feel? How do I feel playing The Expanse again compared to Dispatch? Now, I went back and replayed episode 1 of Batman, the Telltale series. And I'll be quite honest, I love the story. Again, Troy Baker did a fantastic job as Batman. I really like his performance. I really like the characters and the animation of us talking and answering questions and making my own things. But the game felt a little bit dated. I don't want to be like it felt just a little tad bit dated, with some of the animations feeling a little bit slower, not feeling as smooth and things like that. Now I know, it's a game from 2016, so obviously there's been improvement since then. And so that's why I decided, wait, let's play the most recent Telltale game where they are at their absolute best now in animation and smoothness and everything. So that was The Expanse. Going back to The Expanse, a Telltale series, you compare that to Dispatch, and then you kind of feel like, okay, these are two different episodic games, but they're also very similar and they are going to be competing. So which one do you prefer? Which one do you think is the best? The problem is that Telltale has a lot of credit in the bank. Telltale has been doing this for a really long time. And granted, some of those people that worked on those games and wrote those games are now at Ad Hoc. You could infer, you could say and think, well, Ad Hoc has credit in the bank too because those people were the ones that worked on those games. Yes, but it doesn't work that way, right? Them working together now created Ad Hoc Studios, now made this beautiful fucking game of Dispatch. They need more. And the reason that they need more is for us to know what comes next. Can they continue to improve and deliver on the story of Dispatch? I personally believe that they can. But what's going to be different now? What is the gameplay going to look like? Now, let's put Dispatch to the side for a moment. What if they decide to do another game that requires a different type of animation? Because if you look at Dispatch, Dispatch has that regular animation. I really don't know what to call it, like cartoon or anime type of thing. I don't know. When you look at something like Invincible, it has that type of animation. So it's like a cartoon. It just has that animation. Again, I don't know what the fuck it's called necessarily, but you could see and you can tell that that's what they're trying to go for. It's good. It works. It works for them doing this beautiful cinematics, going into the minigame and coming back out. But what if they decided to do another game on a complete, like not Dispatch, like a brand new world, something else that they come up with? How is that animation going to look? Is all of their games going to have the animation that Dispatch has? Or are they all going to look like that? Or if it's a more, say that they do like thriller, crime game where you play as a police officer in a town where a conspiracy is going on, right? Maybe that game requires them to do a more realistic animation, a different art style. They would have to do like something creatively very different that doesn't look like Dispatch. How are they going to go about doing that? What is the gameplay going to look for that game? Is it going to be like a little mini game like they did in Dispatch where you do something and then you go into the cutscene and then you play it out like that? Or is this new game that they work on gonna require them to do something like they did with Telltale, where you have an open enclosed area, like a little area, and you're looking and finding things? Is that what's gonna happen? How would that animation work? That's what I mean. We need a little bit more credit in the bank for Ad Hoc to really say, okay, this is the new fucking standard, because we don't know what else they can do. I don't doubt their ability in writing or in anything. I'm just very curious as a fan, as a spectator, as a follower now of Ad Hoc and their studio, and just being very happy with those guys. I'm curious to see what happens next. Now, and again, the game Dispatch just came out. There's a lot of time for them to figure out their next steps, whether that's season 2 or a new title, whatever that is. I'm going to be there. I'm going to be backing them. But again, you have Telltale, who has been the standard for many, many years in the episodic gaming world. So there's a new competitor in town. There's somebody that knows their system, that knows their history, that has been there, coming for the throne once again. Now, Ad Hoc Studios and Telltale Games worked in collaboration originally for the work on The Wolf Among Us 2. So they have partnered up. People at Ad Hoc said that they ended up leaving the project because they weren't moving fast enough and they needed to move on to Dispatch. So that's what they ended up doing. They don't know if they're ever going to work together. They don't know if they're going to need their help again on The Wolf Among Us 2. None of that is known. But I think Telltale needs to be a little scared. And I think Telltale whatever they've had going on, because they've had something going on for a while. They've had something that isn't allowing them to finish work on The Wolf Among Us 2. They made their big return with the Expanse, and they've been very quiet since. They said that we were going to get The Wolf Among Us 2 released, I think the following year. That didn't happen. They said that it was going to get pushed back. We never got any confirmation on that. And then it got quiet completely. And then we went a whole year without really getting anything. We don't know about its release date. We don't know about how much longer it got pushed back. We don't know nothing. And that's the problem. Telltale, even after its return, has been going through problems with crunch, going through problems with being understaffed, going through problems with maybe not moving fast enough, maybe not hitting deadlines, maybe struggling to figure out certain things. So with all of those problems that Telltale has, can they concentrate on giving us a good game, or are they too focused on we have to get something out soon or this and that? Ad Hoc, I don't know their work life. I don't know if they have crunch. I don't know, but it seems that they're an indie studio. They're smaller. They're taking their time working on this beautiful game, crafting this awesome thing, and now they have built up a lot of good rep. They've built up a lot of good credit that is going to allow them to go into the next game. But Ad Hoc Studio is a studio that you're going to hear more of now. Ad Hoc Studio is something that when people say Telltale, you know what it means. When people say the words Telltale, you know that they're talking about an episodic game of epic proportions. You know they're talking about a really good narrative-driven game that's fun, that's unique, that's different, that introduces you or allows you to explore more these other worlds that maybe have already been created and they take their own spin on it. But now, if things continue to go well, when people say Ad Hoc, they're going to fucking think episodic. They're going to fucking think dispatch. They're going to fucking think narrative. Episodic gaming is more than just Telltale. Even though Telltale is the ones who, I think, revolutionized that, introduced a very good way of doing these types of games. They had been the standard for so long with their incredible writing, their incredible games, and delivering, hit after hit after hit. But Ad Hoc Studio is something that is new. It's fresh. And if they're going to stay in this episodic style type of storytelling, there's a lot of competition. And the more that Telltale falters, the more that Telltale fails to hit deadlines, the more that Telltale delays getting something as long awaited as The Wolf Among Us 2, the more their stock continues to go down and the more the Ad Hoc rises. And if Ad Hoc comes out and delivers a season 2 just as good or better of Dispatch, holy crap, that is going to make some noise. Or if Ad Hoc comes out with a new game and it does just as good as Dispatch and is just as incredible and the story is just as tight and the characters are just as interesting, there might be a new king in town. So there's a lot to consider there. So I wanted to talk about that. What do you guys think? Do you think Ad Hoc is the new standard in episodic games? Do you think they need a little bit more? Let me know your thoughts.